Hi everyone, welcome. We'll just give it a couple of minutes waiting for people to join in and then we'll start. The numbers seem to are still climbing, but we'll probably give it a start. Welcome everyone to Recycling Week webinar series. This is our fourth webinar for this week, which is incredibly exciting. And today we're joined by some awesome speakers to share a little bit more about today's focus. Now, today's focus is Rinse and Clean Thursday, which is essentially focusing on recycling. Now, throughout the week, we've been looking a lot of waste minimization and avoiding waste, but when it comes to recycling, we need to make sure we are addressing contamination and actually maximizing the chances of recycling of all the materials that we come in contact with. Now, without giving any more spoilers, I will pass you over to David, who will take us through some housekeeping for today.
Thanks, Nat. Kia ora, everyone. I'm David Klein, a Senior Sustainability Communicator at thinkstep-anz. We're really pleased to be working with Reclaim to be the webinar partners for New Zealand Recycling Week. thinkstep do a lot of work in the sustainability space, strategy, looking at packaging and things like the circular economy. Some really great topics that we've covered this week. A little bit of housekeeping. Attendees are in listen-only mode. That'll make sure that the audio comes out really well on the recording. If you do have a question though, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. That'll be recorded so we can cover it if we don't have time to answer it live. Please don't use the chat button, that won't get recorded. And finally, we are recording the video and audio for the webinar. That'll be online on the YouTube channel from Reclaim either later today or tomorrow. So if you need to pop out or you'd like to share this with a friend or colleague, you can do that. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Alrighty, so I'm excited to be sharing with you guys the virtual room with the Packaging Forum and MFE. Today we're joined by Rob from the Packaging Forum, sharing a little bit on the initiatives that they've got going in those hard to recycle materials. And then Rod and Liz will take us through some of the initiatives that we've got in Aotearoa now. Now over to you, Rob.
Okay, I'll just, can you just stop sharing your screen now? Well, thank you all for your time. Kia ora, ko Rob Langford Hull. I'm the CEO of the Packaging Forum, and I'm just here today to share our views and information around Rinse and Clean. So the Packaging Forum represents a significant amount of producers and processors across the country, with over 240 members collectively, who generate around $70 billion worth of sales for New Zealand domestically. Our focus is threefold. Firstly, we deliver practical stewardship solutions for packaging, which we'll touch on shortly. We also help our members in doing the right thing around packaging choices, etc. And we invest quite significantly through grants into the marketplace. So from a stewardship perspective, I think it's really important for people to recognize that within the stewardship, apologies people, that there are multiple elements in bringing a proper closed loop, a recovery solution together. And today we're really going to touch on probably the two key points. One is around the consumer and their behavior, because if we can't get them to do the right thing, that devalues and degrades the opportunity to recover the material. And we will touch with the processor, who again, from the other side of that coin, if it's not provided to them in the right state, they cannot maximize the return on that material. So when you think about rinse and clean, we're not just talking about packaging to go through your recycling systems. Rinse and clean literally is about everything. So in our view, here's a really great example. It's we supported the Zero Waste Network through a grant to build this trailer, which is based in the Marlborough region, and it's a process where they've got stainless steel coffee cups and crockery, and they go to events. They utilize their kitchen to provide the dishes and everything else for the facilities, and then you bring them back to this facility to rinse and clean it and reuse it. So it's really about starting at the top and going, how do we just eliminate the need for reusable packaging in this way, and therefore make it a lot more simple for the consumer. So it's really about, do we need it? How do we stop it? And another example on that, in Waihi Beach, we have just invested in water refill stations in the parks down there at the waterfront, which allows people to just simply refill, and that there is no need to consume plastic bottles or have them in the environment in the first place. Soft plastic scheme. Currently, this is available to around 80% of New Zealanders. It's within the retail network take-back system, so in Countdowns, Foodstuffs, Warehouse, Farrow Fresh, and a few other stores. The key around this project is absolutely clean, right? Rinse and recycle. If it comes back in that state, we can absolutely use it into a second use solution. The great thing is that most people that use this system actually are now starting to understand how it works and the importance of that. And our latest survey showed that only 0.9% of the material come back was contaminated with food. So clearly getting the messaging right, really simple, is key to the success of these. And then there was another 3.3% of material that came into that stream that was not soft plastic. So, but overall, that is a really good result at around 4% contamination level. And it is something that we can work with within that stream. As part of that scheme, we also recently developed with New Zealand Post, a return to supplier solution through a postback system. And this allows anybody that doesn't have access to the bins, either due to physical challenges or access or any other reason, to obtain a soft plastics recycling bag. Simply clean it again, clean the material, put it in the bag, lock it up, ring your courier post provider and or take it to a New Zealand Post store, drop it off, and it'll get returned. The bags can be purchased again through New Zealand Post stores, the Warehouse, and I believe it's about to go into some of the Countdown and Foodstuffs also. But again, same premise, clean and clear. The latest survey we just did with that material, again, we were up in well in the 99 point something % clean and clear. So people, again, doing the right thing. Again, SaveBoard is a new organisation on the market that takes both soft plastics pack and liquid paperboard. If you go to the SaveBoard site, you can find the locations to return liquid paperboard. But the message again, and it's consistent with everybody in this case, is open it, wash it, dry it, and put it back in, and it can be reused for a secondary purpose. So SaveBoard makes a board that is potentially a replacement for things such as jib and other internal linings at the moment. And they use both the soft plastics material that we have, and the liquid paperboard. So again, a great initiative, achievable through making sure that we do the right thing by rinse, dry and clean. In the glass area, we also run the Glass Packaging Forum. Currently has 75% of glass consumed in New Zealand is recycled. 60% of that glass, 60% of the overall glass recovered goes back to new bottles and jars. Again, the critical part of getting this right for glass is about clean, and it's about segregation of colours. But clean, clean, clean is the message that we cannot promote enough, because that will ensure that we can achieve in New Zealand the highest outcome for everything. So I just want to go back to that loop. So in closing the loop, whilst we're focused on the consumer primarily and the processor and getting those two sides of the coins right, it is really important in developing any national solution that all the pieces of the jigsaw are working and operating at a level that allows us to work. Simply, there's no use a brand pushing out and promoting a recovery system if they haven't got a closed soup lift into a processor, if we don't have the consumer doing the right thing and having access to that solution, whatever that be, whether it's a incentivized take-back system such as a proposed CRS, whether it's a simple retail perspective as in a soft plastic scheme, or if it's mass material recovery through the curbside such as the glass system. All of these systems have the same fundamentals, that if the material isn't of the quality that we need, they will not succeed to the level we need in the system. And the other important thing is each one of those decisions costs. So poor quality, dirty product means that we have to invest more in processing, which means it's more in cost ultimately for the recovery of the material, and that flows back through the system, through to the consumer, etc. Again, in the collection, if we make it messy and put the wrong things in the wrong places, again, it just creates more cost to the solution. So simple, 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 clean, dry, first and foremost, and use the right collection methodology for the material. The less mixed it is, the easier it is for us to use those materials. So that's all I want to share today. I'll just now hand over to
I'll take it over. Thank you so much, Rob. I think if you were in doubt of what today's focus is, I think Rob has done a fantastic job reiterating that clean and rinse are the main takeaways. But over to you, Rod. You're welcome to share your screen.
Kia ora. Better unmute myself. Can everyone see my screen? Great, thank you. All right. Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Roderick Boys Tokaringoa. So I'm from the Ministry for the Environment, and I'm here today with my colleague Liz Butcher, who will also be talking to our short presentation for you today. So we're obviously going to talk to the subject of the day, rinse and clean, very important, and the broader subject of contamination. And then Liz and I are also going to be talking to a brief kind of update on our work program, or the recycling parts of our work program at least, because obviously that's there's lots of things happening that are relevant to this conversation. So straight into it then. So why rinse and clean? I guess that there's two really important reasons, in addition to everything that Rob has already spoken to, which we wholeheartedly agree with, Rob, and support your messaging there. But one of the really important ones is that people have to deal with this stuff at the other end. So people tend to put their recycling out in their curbside bin. Wonderful, job done. I've done my bit. Thank you very much. But of course, that's not the end of the story. As per Rob's circular diagram clearly showed, there is a life for these materials beyond what happens once the person's put it out in the curbside, and people are involved in that process all the way along. So people have to deal with that stuff. So if there is contamination in the recycling stream, it needs to be taken out as much as possible. And often that does involve other people in our communities having to handle the material. So that's kind of the first really important reason why rinsing and cleaning and broader contamination should ideally be avoided wherever possible. The other really important reason is this is about commodities ultimately, isn't it? That's why we recycle, because when we recycle things, we are essentially what we're doing is we are putting materials back into the manufacturing system, as Rob again noted, and the more that we do that, the more generally we reduce emissions, for example, and obviously we're able to have those materials go round and round and round, which reduces our overall impact on the environment in many ways, not just emissions. So you have this big pile of recycling here. This is what it looks like when it all gets emptied out of everybody's bins back at what they call a materials recycling facility, or MRF as we know it in the sector. And there's this big pile of stuff, and there's a prize for anyone who can see the obvious piece of contamination that's in the forefront of the first photo there. It is a thing that goes over your water toby. It's a plastic thing. It's a piece of underground infrastructure. Guess what? It doesn't go in the curbside recycling system. So there's a piece of obvious contamination. It's the black thing in the foreground there. And then the next picture, this is fives. This is what plastic 5 looks like when it's all baled up, ready to be shipped off and recycled. So this is your ice cream tubs and your margarine tubs and all those sorts of things. And yes, 5s do have markets in New Zealand, and most people should be having those. Not everyone has them available in their curbside recycling as 5s to be recycled, but most do now, is my understanding. And there's a question actually that's come through already that says, where do we go to find out more information around what we can recycle in our area? And the answer to that is your local council website, because there are some variations across the country. And so 5s is one of those ones that some do and some others don't. And we'll get to what we're doing about that, are those sorts of inconsistencies in a minute. But the last one is a bale of PET. So PET is all your bottles, typically, those clear meat trays that you get at the supermarket as well. And so my next slide is what happens to these things. So they end up going to a processor who will wash those materials and separate more contamination and turn them into a product called flake. And then you are able to then obviously make new products from the flake. So contamination through the system from either not washing and cleaning adequately or putting the wrong materials in the wrong place leads to obviously less of these materials able to be recycled back into new products. And so the better we get at this, the more efficient we can get at it, the better a system we can have in terms of the circular economy and making these products go round and round and round. Moving on from that one. So contamination, it comes in many forms. So obviously Rob has talked to where the soft plastics should go. They should not be going into curbside recycling. So this is at that MRF that I mentioned earlier. This is the contamination bins at the MRFs from the curbside system. And you can see the sorts of products there that end up in those bins, and humans have had to again pull these out often. And so, you know, and it obviously it ends up in landfill rather than being recycled because it's gone to the wrong place. So you can see the soft plastics, you've got your liquid paperboard containers that Rob mentioned, but you've also got increasingly sort of fiber products that are compostable going into the dry recycling collection and curbside. That's not the place that those products should be going either. And one that is really key is, and it's very important, is obviously e-waste should not be going in the curbside recycling bin. And it's particularly dangerous if the product has a battery in it that can, when it gets compacted in the back of the truck, it can cause a fire. And that can also happen back at the materials recovery facility as well. So, the risk is that, a community loses its entire recycling facility as a result of a fire from somebody chucking a phone into their curbside recycling bin. So please don't do that. Now we're going to roll into a quick update on our work program, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Liz Butcher, who will be taking over.
Kia ora koutou. So my name is Liz Butcher. I am one of the managers here at the Ministry for the Environment in our Waste and Resource Efficiency Division. And as Rod mentioned, I'm going to talk about some of the work that we have ongoing at the moment around improving recycling. So if you could move to the next slide, Rod. Thank you. So compostable products are another source of confusion and can cause contamination in both our curbside recycling system as well as in compost. Many of these products need to be processed in a specialist compost facility, and these are quite limited around the country. So in March 2022, MFE released a position statement on compostable products. This is available on our website for you to have a look at if you're interested in finding out a bit more detail. But the position statement outlines some of the kind of key challenges and opportunities for compostable products and how that they might fit with our policy direction in Aotearoa New Zealand, including how they fit with our recycling system. In short, we suggest taking a very cautious approach when considering the use of compostable products, but I'd really encourage you to go and read a little bit more if you're interested in the document itself. And over to the next. Our National Plastics Action Plan. So in September 2021, the government released its very first National Plastics Action Plan. This plan reflects the recommendations of the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor and her report on rethinking plastics in Aotearoa, New Zealand, which was released in late 2019. And it outlines a vision of a future plastics system in New Zealand where plastic use is sustainable, it is innovative, and where plastics are used in a way that protects the environment and benefits society. So there are kind of three key pillars of our vision for plastics in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and these include less plastics, so reducing how much we use and our consumption, more circular, so improving the way that we use and design plastics so that they can be recovered and recycled and turned into new products, and better for the environment. So where we do use plastics, ensuring that the plastic that we do use is free from as much harm as possible. So the action plan has a number of key actions that the ministry is working on over the next 3 to 4 years. And one of the very large projects that we have underway is work to ban some of the more problematic plastics that can contaminate the system. Next slide, Rod. Thank you. So from 1st of October 2021, our very first kind of tranche of plastic phase outs came into force. This was based on some work that we did back in 2021 when we consulted on proposals to ban a whole range of different plastic products and single-use items. Through this consultation, we received close to 8,000 submissions with 97% support from the public on taking forward some of these actions. So following this, Cabinet agreed to ban 3 different hard-to-recycle plastic types and 6 different single-use items across kind of 3 key tranches, which I'll come to in a bit more detail soon. The first tranche of bans came into force at the beginning of this month, and it is now illegal to provide or sell or manufacture the products that you saw back up there on the previous slide. So these items all have readily recyclable alternatives, or they can be replaced by reusable alternatives. For example, a metal spoon could be used instead of a drink stirrer. You could take your own container at lunchtime, or if you really need to use a plastic container, then we would really encourage looking for one that is a plastic type 1, 2 or 5, which can be recycled in New Zealand. So as I said, this is part of a broader program of work to phase out more plastic types via bans. And this second tranche of phase outs will come into force in mid-2023 next year. And this will include things like plastic produce bags, plastic plates, bowls and cutlery, plastic straws and plastic produce labels. And then there'll be another tranche of phase outs in mid-2025, which will get all other PVC and polystyrene food and drink packaging. So that's your number 3s and your number 6s. So moving away from these plastics will help us to reduce our plastic waste and litter. It will help us to improve our recycling system by reducing contamination. So number 3s and number 6s are a big contaminant in our recycling system, and they have a really big impact on plastic type number 1 in particular, which is a high value material. So by removing these from our system, it will mean that our recycling system can operate much more efficiently. And over to the next slide, sorry, Rod. In March this year, we also consulted on some proposals to transform our recycling system. So this included 3 key parts. The proposal around a container return scheme, which would see a refundable deposit placed on beverage containers to help incentivize the recovery and recycling of those containers. It also included several proposals around improving our household curbside recycling system. One of the key ones is around proposals to standardise the materials that are collected for recycling. So for plastics, that would mean only collecting things like plastics number 1, 2 and 5. It also included a proposal to roll out food waste collections across the country. And lastly, the third part of that proposal was around separating business food waste from general rubbish. So the consultation closed in late May 2022, and we received over 6,000 submissions. At the moment, we're working through all of those submissions, but decisions are likely to be made towards the end of this year, and then decisions will be communicated publicly soon thereafter. And I think we're back to you, Rod.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. I'll be super quick because I'm conscious of time. There's something very exciting happened 2 days ago. The Waste Minimisation Fund opened again. And we're changing the way we do our investment of the waste disposal levy. This is the government's portion of the waste disposal levy. And it's also been augmented quite significantly by the CERF, or the Climate Emergency Response Fund. So everyone is likely aware that the emissions reduction plan has been released, and it's a big government priority. So there's funding going into actually improving curbside services, and in particular the organics side of things. So I won't talk too much about what's on this slide, but there's a link on here if anyone wants to go and have a look. There is targeted packages available for councils, as well as the funding that's open to everyone in terms of processing infrastructure, curbside collection infrastructure, etc. I'll quickly move on. Sorry, I'm in the wrong place. There we go. And then last but not least, it is Recycling Week, but it's very important that we recognise the waste hierarchy, and that, you know, we can all make choices every day to reduce. It's not just about recycling. Moving up the hierarchy is really important. So in addition to obviously our individual choices, and there's information once again on our website about this, things that people can do, but we've also got some of that climate emergency response funding going into national programs to educate people about how to, in particular, reduce food waste, and they're going to be rolling out over the next few years. And in addition to that, we've also got we're also working with the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment via their Building for Climate Change program to sort of target activities around the construction and demolition sector to initiate behaviour change there as well. And there's a lot more happening, and obviously there's a range of key partners there, including the New Zealand Green Building Council and brands. So we'll wrap it up there because we're out of time, and obviously welcome any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, both Rod and Liz, for sharing all of this. It's certainly exciting to see all the stuff that is in the pipeline. And Rod, you're right, it is Recycling Week, but the overall takeaway message from Recycling Week is waste minimisation. So the first question that I want to ask is, coming from Shruti, by phasing out containers and other materials, what does it mean for the suppliers who manufacture these single-use items?
I think that must be a question for me. For the products that are being phased out, it does mean that you can no longer manufacture them, and you cannot sell them to your customers anymore. So those products that were included in that first tranche from October 1, it is now illegal to manufacture or sell or provide those products. There is some really comprehensive guidance on our website, so if you want to find out more, really encourage you to go and check that out.
Liz, can I add to that just one extra point, which is that there are substitutes and alternatives that are better than those products, which is kind of that's the idea. Yeah.
Oh, we've got a question here, which I think is for Rob. What happens to the 40% of recovered glass that doesn't get recycled into new bottles or jars?
So the 40% difference between the 60% going to jars and that, as you saw, we have a 75% recovery rate. So 25% of our glass is just not recovered at all, for a variety of reasons, including the collection systems, which Rod alluded to as part of standardisation, and we're looking forward to how that progresses and improves that ability to access and recover that glass. Some of it is just truly behaviour, people putting it in the wrong bins, etc. And as it gets broken, it becomes more and more difficult to recover. Within the glass, once it's collected, that 75%, of the glass that goes through to furnace, there is a percentage lost through the process of beneficiation, which is a process where the glass needs to be cleaned up, ready to go, removing of labels, removing of caps, removing of all of those things. Glass gets caught in caps when the bottles are broken, so that's just lost as waste through the system. So you never, in any system, whether it's plastic, glass, paper, you never get 100% return for 100% collected. You will lose a percentage of material due to the quality. Why we keep coming back to the quality of the product at the start drives the quality of the outcome at the end. So the better it's cleaned, the better it is at the end in terms of results. And there's also glass that is, for a number of reasons, is actually turned into roading base and other such uses, both from an economic and quality perspective. So glass is crushed and used in roading base. It's also used and crushed and put into filter mediums and other uses. So whilst we'd prefer to have everything in the furnace, there's a whole lot of logistics reasons why that can't happen. So
thank you, Rob. And just lastly, what is the main takeaways that individuals can learn from today's to actually help our recycling and actually minimize waste altogether?
Absolutely. The first principle is return it to the recovery stream in the highest quality possible. Rinse, clean and dry. Can't stress it enough. Look for the right stream for the material. Don't just dump it into the first thing that's convenient. If there's a glass bin or a plastic bin available, especially in public place, use the plastic or the glass bin. Don't just throw it in the waste bin, because the chances are you are going to lose material through that thing. Through your own networks, use the stop plastic scheme. It's there to segregate and enhance the recovery of that material. Have a look on the Save Board website to where that material can be collected at the moment. That's a growing network, but there are places that can get it. Go to your council website and look at where they will take back all materials. Whether that be, as Rod mentioned, batteries and other timber and other materials. Look on your council websites, look where it can go. If you do the right thing, it helps the total circular solution, and that will drive up the recovery rate. Not just the recovery rate, but the actual recycling rate in material. It's a number we don't often talk about, but it's one thing to recover it. It is a secondary number to actually give it a useful secondary life, and that can only be achieved through the quality of the material recovered.
Anything you want to add, Liz or Rod?
I would only double down on everything that Rob has said. I think he summarised it very well. And in particular, council websites are the key source of information for what is available in each district and or region, simply because there are different levels of service across the regions, and in districts, even in cities where there are literally invisible district council lines, and suddenly the service is different if you go over that line. So it's really important you check in with your local council website. But part of what the government is working on is hopefully going to try and eliminate some of that confusion, and where there are gaps in infrastructure and investment that need that some of that investment that's available as of yesterday or the day before is going to be targeting exactly that. So we're trying to do our best to make it better, but obviously consumers can do things right now today to do their side of things. So thank you.
Thank you. Anything from you, Liz, or they've both said it all?
Yeah, I think they've both said it all. I don't need to add anything further. Thank you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for participating in today's webinar. I hope you all took some valuable learnings. And if you don't already have this ingrained in your head, rinse and clean is the most important takeaway message. Thank you so much for all you guys that joined. We will see you tomorrow for our last webinar in our webinar series with talking about reflection and what we can do this weekend. So thank you very much and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.